listening to I Am Refocused Radio with your host, Shamaya Reed. This show is designed to inspire you to live your purpose and regain your focus. And now, here's your host, Shamaya Reed.
Hey, welcome to I Am Refocused Radio. We are here once again, and today we have a true amazing guest on the show. Today we have Gregg Spangnolia, and he's an attorney at law. He has an amazing website you can go check out and review is zsinjurylaw.com. We're going to learn about his path to his career and what inspired him to do what he's doing today. So first and foremost, Gregg, thank you for your time. How you doing, man?
Thank you, man, for the introduction. I'm doing good today.
Well, we know that you are practicing law, but we also know that you have an amazing story, and that's what we are all about on Refocused Radio. So you grew up in Florida, so at a young age, I'm sure you had some big dreams. Share that with the audience. What kind of paved the path for you to be where you are today?
Yeah, I can tell you that I've pretty much always wanted to be an attorney. Growing up, you see TV shows and things like that, and it glamorizes a lot of the corporate kind of world. And that's kind of what I fantasized about doing when I was growing up. It wasn't so much just because of the glamour of what television made it into. I wanted to help people, and I thought I really could help people a lot as being a lawyer. So that's kind of where I gravitated towards ever since, I would say, probably middle school. I flirted with the idea of being a doctor as well. Decided that science exactly wasn't what was for me. And I reignited my flame for law when I was in college. And ever since then, I've just been working towards being the best lawyer I can be, being the best person I can be, and helping as many people as I can.
And you were at the University of Florida. So when you went to that university, what type of law were you studying while attending there?
So in undergrad, it wasn't so much of studying law. I didn't do too much of the pre-law stuff. I did a few courses of civil liberties and justice while in undergrad. And then when I went to law school, the first year is pretty much just getting a basic introduction to law. I focused a little bit on some skills-based courses such as trial advocacy and drafting for lawyers. I did some torts and some constitutional law and things like that. But I really focused on and really enjoyed the trial advocacy, the being in the courtroom, and the torts, which is what your personal injury kind of law is based out of.
So kind of illustrate for our audience, what was the process like for you after, your studies in university and post studies? What was your first opportunity in launching your career? And did you start as an intern, or how did that process look like for you?
So I started off by interning during the summers during law school. I worked for various types of companies. I got experience in multiple types of law. I worked in-house for a large corporation, mainly working on subcontractor agreements and things like that. I didn't find that very interesting. I did a little bit of criminal law. It was called the Capital, I forget what it's called, Capital Regional Council. They focused on helping people who were wrongly convicted, who are on death row, try to get their convictions overturned. That was kind of interesting. And I kind of found the criminal law interesting. I also worked for a couple of personal injury law firms while in law school as an intern, kind of like a legal assistant or a law clerk, whatever you want to call it. That's where I really gained the most experience that I enjoyed. I really saw that we could help change people's lives after they've been injured due to the negligence of others. And that's kind of where I started falling in love with personal injury. I can tell you that when I started law school, I had no interest in being a personal injury attorney whatsoever. And that's not because I don't think personal injury attorneys are helpful or good attorneys. It was just, you go into law school and you hear all of these ambulance chaser and stories about the greed of personal injury lawyers. And everyone's telling you that these kinds of attorneys are opportunists and not helpful. But once I actually got to experience it as an employee, it's completely changed my life and opened my eyes.
Listen, I'm Refocused Radio, talking to our guest today, Gregg Spangnolia. You can go to his website, zsinjurylaw.com. And with personal injury, there's different, subcategories, if you will. You have auto accidents, you have motorcycle accidents, you have truck, you got bicycle, you got animal attacks, you got product liability, you got slip and fall. What are some of the things that you can help educate our audience with that can help them whenever they're in a situation where they need to find someone to represent them?
Well, I can tell you that the most important thing, whenever you're injured, regardless of what the injury is, slip and fall, medical malpractice, defective product or drug, car accident, most important thing is to collect evidence. If it's a fall, make sure you know what you fell on. Take photographs of that hazard that caused your fall. If it's a car accident, make sure you take pictures of the vehicles at the scene of the accident. Never admit fault, even if you may think you're partially at fault. That's not your job to make the decision. That's for if you end up in a trial, it's for a jury to make the decision. Maybe you were partially at fault, but in most states, there's what's known as comparative negligence, and you can still make a recovery even if you're partially at fault. So if you admit you're at fault, they'll be able to use that admission against you. And then other than that, if you feel pain whatsoever after an incident or accident, make sure you get medical treatment, because you never know how severe those injuries can be. You could run into a situation where your injuries mushroom and get much worse because you didn't get the medical treatment you should have initially. So make sure you get checked out after a car accident. If you feel anything whatsoever, you just want to make sure that you don't have anything that's life-threatening, and make sure a doctor can give you the A-OK.
And someone who is in Florida and they need your assistance, they need you to represent them. We know what you said moments ago, the starting point, but what's the process like when they start with you on day one? What are some of the things that you help them walk through with them so that way they are never lost in the process?
Yeah, well, I'll just walk through a car accident case just because those are kind of some of the most prevalent cases in Florida. There's definitely a whole lot of car accidents and truck accidents, motorcycle accidents throughout the state of Florida. So hopefully the call comes in pretty soon after the accident. The earlier we can get involved, the better. Our office prides ourselves on our communication. We stay in constant communication. I provide my personal cell phone to the majority of my clients. And if I don't provide my personal cell phone, we have a texting capability at our office. We'll stay in constant text communication, call communication, email communication. We share all the documents that we send over to the insurance companies, but we help walk you through the process. So the property damage, we don't take a fee on property damage, but we help make sure that the insurance company is paying the fair amount for the vehicle or the correct amount for the damages to the vehicle. We make sure that they provide a rental if that is an applicable and available insurance for them. We make sure that they are seeking the correct medical treatment and making sure that they're healthy. If they need any kinds of recommendations for specialists, we can certainly help out with that. But basically, we just make sure that they know we're there for them, that we communicate with them constantly, and we let them know what's going on at all times.
And for those who are listening, and just a lot of people who have to deal with animals, whether it's from a neighbor or if it's, they're at someone's event, at someone else's house, and their neighbors have pets. In a situation where someone is attacked by an animal, I mean, what is that process for them to get through that? Because they might, number one, be in pain, and they may not be able to, think clearly, about the whole situation that happened. But what is that process usually like in your experience with people who have ever been attacked by an animal?
Yeah, animal bites can be difficult and challenging claims. First of all, the medical process for animal bites, especially dog bites, can be complicated if there's any kind of rabies involved. That's a very life-threatening situation. There's all kinds of issues with bacteria getting involved into the skin from a result of a bite. So the medical process itself is quite complicated. It's definitely important to make sure you go to the hospital right away if you have a penetrating wound as a result of a dog bite or other animal bite. Now, regarding liability, there's this concept called the one bite rule. It basically states that if the owner of the animal has reason to believe that that animal was dangerous, they have a duty to make sure that these kinds of situations don't happen. So the claim would be against the homeowner, and particularly you're looking for the homeowner's insurance to make a claim against.
Now, when you look at all the different cases that you've been able to represent, is there any particular one that kind of comes to mind that, you can share with the audience, a situation that happened but got resolved with your services?
Yeah, I can share a situation in some broad terms without disclosing my client's identity and things in private information and things like that.
Sure.
There was one particular case that stands out. We had a client who was severely injured in an accident and required extensive medical treatment, hospitalized for an extended period of time for several months to be exact. And this client had hired 3 previous attorneys before getting to me and my team. And all of those attorneys basically told her there was no insurance to pursue. So we were able to locate an insurance policy that 3 previous attorneys were unable to locate, and we were able to get her a settlement for $2 million.
That's very impressive. Now, when it comes to dealing with company vehicles, is there certain things that people should be aware of in that process? For example, say someone gets injured, by a semi-truck, accident. Is that process typically the same, or is there something a little bit more involved with that?
So there's 2 answers. In general, the process itself is the same. However, the background things that are happening through the attorney investigation are different. Whenever commercial vehicles, particularly semi-trucks, are involved, it's a lot more complicated legally. There's a lot more there's different arguments for liability. There's different statutes that are involved. There's actually federal regulations involved if it's trucking. And there's all kinds of evidence that you need to make sure isn't destroyed and that you can get access to prove liability. For example, in a trucking accident, there are regulations as to hours of service. So a truck driver can only drive a certain period of time without having breaks. There's regulations as to pre- and post-trip inspections. So that driver would have to thoroughly examine the vehicle before and after the trip to make sure that everything is in working order. CDL drivers, or commercial driver's license drivers, have a heightened standard of care because they're technically professional drivers. So there's a lot of considerations that come into play when a commercial driver, in particular semi-trucks, are involved in a collision.
Now, when it comes to commercial properties, we know that they have to be very careful how they are set up and that they are in a safe environment. Is there a story generally that you came across in your career where situation someone had been injured on the property of a commercial, and how was that resolved?
Yeah, these happen all the time. So a owner of a property basically has two duties to those who are invited upon that property: the duty to maintain that property in a reasonably safe condition and to warn of known hazards. So if they fail to do either of those, there's an avenue for liability against that commercial property owner. Now, I've handled several cases, numerous cases involving slip and falls, trip and falls, falling objects, you name it, any kind of event that could happen on a property. One that sticks out in particular is a gentleman was delivering food, and he tripped and fell in the parking lot because they failed to maintain the lighting in the parking lot. It was at night. They didn't put lighting, and he tripped over a hazard that was in the roadway. We were able to settle the case, but it just shows that there's all kinds of things that commercial property owners need to do. They need to make sure the property is safe, and one of those things is lighting.
Another service that you have in your practice is nursing homes. Neglect being the main focal point. How often is it for older adults who are, having their older parents and aging parents in a nursing home? How often is neglect found in Florida, where you are, and how easy is it to go through the evidence to show that it's proof of neglect?
Well, unfortunately, the answer to the first question is it happens way too often. The assisted living facilities and nursing home facilities typically understaff their facilities to increase their profits. And in order to prove it, I wouldn't say it's difficult. The difficulty lies when records are doctored or fixed after the fact, or the records aren't kept properly, and then you're relying on testimony of nurses saying they did things, but it's not documented. Basically, the documents are your friend in a nursing facility because you can use them regardless of how they fill them out to prove your case that they neglected the resident.
So if someone listening right now, they're in Florida and they have one of the parents in a nursing home, how early on should they try to keep their own record of copies of timestamps, forms, maybe when they visit them, should they be taking notes? What were some of the things you would recommend for them so that way, in any case they need to be represented, that they can be in a better situation versus someone who doesn't have anything to show for?
So it really depends on why they're in the nursing home or assisted living facility. Each person who's entered into is supposed to have their own care plan of care. For example, someone who has a hip surgery and is immobile is going to have more frequent checks by nurses than someone that doesn't have that severe of an injury or is not immobile. There's requirements for immobile patients to have them rotated so they don't develop pressure sores or ulcers, which is one of the most frequent kinds of claims is bed sores that develop because they're not getting their, it's usually 15-minute checks or rotations to make sure that they're not developing these pressure sores. So if a resident or a family member notices that they or their family member isn't being treated properly, it's important to document it as much as you can. I know that it's hard to do so, especially if you're in there nursing an injury. But if you can do anything, photographs, videos, if you can record abuse happening, which may be hard, any kind of evidence that you can put together to prove your case would be instrumentally helpful.
Once again, listen to I Am Refocused Radio, talking to our guest today, Gregg Spangnolia. You go to his website, zsinjurylaw.com. When we listen to this episode and people can learn so much about your practice and what you do, what are some fundamentals that you would want our audience to take away as far as your practice, what it stands for, and what you can expect when they work with you?
Well, we're here to help people. We want to make sure that if you were injured by someone else due to their negligence, recklessness, or intent, that you don't have to foot the bill. You are going to be compensated so long as you're able to be, so long as we can prove fault, so long as there's an avenue to recovery. You should be compensated for things that you're not at fault for injuries that you're not at fault for. We focus here on communication. We focus on relationships, and we treat you like family.
Once again, I want to say thanks to our guest today, Gregg Spangnolia, and everything that you do for Florida and where you live. I want to say thank you for your time and appreciate what you do.
Thank you very much.